Hello.
Hello, good morning, sir.
Good morning. So, how are you doing? Yeah, sorry, I last class I could not come because there was a very important meeting that was scheduled suddenly, and so we could not come. So how are you guys doing? So, by the way, is Rahul Mishra? Is he around?
He's not there today.
Sorry,
He's not there today.
he's not there today. I mean, is he fine? Is he because I mean, like he has not submitted his assignment. I am just hoping that it is not because of some technical issues, like he thinks that he has submitted but he could not submit or something like that.
I don't know about this assignment, but like we were in a group assignment for another subject, and he said he was, I don't know, he had some problems.
Problems? Is it technical problems or a personal problem?
Not personal.
Okay. Okay, fine. Okay. And I can see Prabhudam Bidasar is here, but it is not the first time that is happening that he has not submitted it. Prabhu, I think I will not allow you to submit today because I will be discussing the problem today, right now. That is one of them. So, this is a, um, yeah, I think, yeah, unless you kind of can convince me that why you could not submit it earlier, I think I will go ahead with my teaching of today's class, in which I will be discussing a little bit of this. Okay, so good. So, any questions so far? How are you? I mean, what all did you read or something?
So, like in the 8th chapter, 8.7.
In the 8th chapter, okay.
No, not 8th, dynamic program chapter itself.
Sixth chapter, okay, fine.
Yes, 6.7. They discussed a way to reduce the space complexity. And that was not completely clear to me. It was.
What was on 6.7?
I mean, for sequence alignment to reduce the space complexity.
Sir, I also had the same problem. Like in 6.7, they were trying to do this space complexity. So I understood the first part that for finding out the value, they are just storing the last, last recursion of that thing, to just report the optimum value. But for tracing back the entire solution, their solution was not completely clear to me.
Okay. Okay. So you are saying that, if I understand correctly, you are saying that, I mean, they can find the value, but you cannot, at least you cannot understand how to get back the whole solution.
Yes, with only using space order of m plus n.
Okay. With using space order of 1 plus n. Actually, I think that is not. So, has the tail told that it is order m plus n space even for tracing back the whole solution?
Yeah, they gave a solution like that.
Okay. Okay. Again, I mean, I have not gone over it, so I cannot, off the top of my head, I don't want to comment too much on that. I can take a look at it. And okay, so as I kind of told you guys, can someone here right now, I mean, whoever has recent internet, can just go to the classroom and post a comment saying that, can you please explain 6.7, so that it kind of is registered, or we are having doubt understanding 6.7, and then I will take it up in the next class or something.
Okay, so I'll post it now.
Yeah, because then in that case we have some time to prepare ourselves, because I mean we don't really understand, we don't really know the whole paper book. I mean, what to cover, right? Yeah, and and every book has their own way of writing things and all. And personally, I never read this book because I always followed an older book, which is this Corman Lesserson Revest CLR. But that's a bit monster of a book. So this is a better book as a overall first read in algorithms. But which problem is that since I have never gone over this book line by line, so I cannot vouch for every part of it on the fly. Okay. Okay, good. So I will discuss this one hopefully in next class. Okay. Yeah. So this is something that again I had told you earlier also. Anything that you think that from the book, if you have not understood certain things, just post it. Okay, in the classroom. Just saying that I am unable to understand this part of the proof. Can you please discuss? Okay, and then that will help us to kind of prepare it. Okay, so any other part of that? Any other questions in other areas? Okay, so what about overall dynamic programming? Now that you have read this dynamic programming to some level, right? It has kind of been sinking in your head. I hope that you have been reading it. Are you guys more or less familiar, comfortable with this concept of understanding what's going on here in dynamic programming?
Yes, sir. It's like some problems are a bit hard to think of, but I think we are getting the idea.
Right. Yeah. So creating up this problem, creating up the recurrence, particularly, is the hardest part, right? And yeah, but overall, it's a kind of a recurrence. I mean, I always thought of this one as a more of a. I mean, I thought dynamic programming was slightly easier to understand than other parts. So this is a kind of very recursive algorithm kind of stuff like that, right? And I mean, all you have to do is kind of store things properly. And so, okay, so how about? So let me just share my screen.
Sir,
yeah, go ahead.
I had one doubt. So in the problem set 3, I couldn't understand the third question. Means what we have to minimize there. I couldn't understand that.
Problem set 3, not 4.
No, problem set 3. There are only 3
problem set 3. Problem set 3. Okay. Not the assignment. Okay, fine. Sorry. Problem set 3. Which problem can you say?
Problem 3.
Problem set 3. Problem 3. Consider a linear keyboard of lowercase numbers and numbers, where the leftmost 26 keys are the alphabets 1 to Z in order, followed by digits. Linear keyboard of okay, followed by the 30 punctuation characters. This is described. And end up with a blank. Assume you start with your left finger on the A and your right finger on the blank. Give a dynamic programming that finds out the most efficient way to type a given length in terms of the minimizing total number of involved. Right. In terms of the total movement of the text. They should involve shifting both fingers even to the left of the screen. The complexity. Okay.
Like in the example given.
Right.
In the example given, the movement will be basically from our left hand will remain at the same place. It is already at A, right?
Right.
And the right hand will move from the rightmost place to B. So that difference will be the movement.
That difference will be the movement, right? So of course, say if this AB is there, right? If there's only 4 ABs, say AB kind of stuff, then I mean, if you use only one finger and write A, then you use that same finger to move B, then your same finger to go back to A, and then go on up, back and forth. You will take the total movement will be 8, right? Because you are 8 or 7, you have to just take, because it's the number of times you are moving, right?
Yes,
but
sir.
if that AB, that sequence is say of 1000 letters, right? The same thing will, if you just use one finger, it will take the 999, right? Instead, you can bring the right finger to B. So how much cost do you incur? You cost the length of the keyboard, which is say something like 50 or something, some number.
Mhm.
And after that, there is no cost at all. Okay, so the optimal cost will be just be 50. You understand?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
So like it will like keep adding up, right? Means the total movement of fingers.
It will keep on adding up. If any finger moves, then it will keep on adding up.
Okay, sir.
Right. So I mean, yeah. So yeah, think about this one. So many times these problems are slightly easier if you convert it to. So, I mean, of course, the problems, these are called the story problems or word problems. I mean, it's kind of, it's a problem that has a nice thing going on. Like you do this, you do this, and then finally things are happening, and you tend to optimize this. But actually, inherently, it is possibly you are solving a graph problem or I mean, some other problem that is not that you have slightly more abstract understanding of. Okay, and then you will be able to solve it easier.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Any more questions? So let me share my screen. So tell me one thing. Can you see it? Hello.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So have you guys thought about this problem of that finding the shortest path? Okay. So you have of course done the Dijkstra's algorithm. So you have the Dijkstra's algorithm, right? And what it can do, it can find the single source shortest path in a positive graph or in a graph with positive edges, right? In a graph with positive edge weights. And there was a question in this assignment, last assignment, is that what happens with the negative edges, right? And I hope that you guys have all solved this problem, which means that you could kind of come up with an example where Dijkstra would give a completely wrong answer. Right? In fact, I mean, so it is something that we discussed last time. What about negative edges, edge weights? Okay, and here we had this observation. First observation was that ideally you should not have negative cycles. Okay, so there should not be any negative cycle. And this is kind of makes sense because if you have negative cycles, then this question is not very well defined. I mean, you can make it really low. Okay. I mean, there are certain other cases, or I mean, it might be because you are working with directed graphs, right? If you work with directed graphs, particularly, if you work with directed graphs, then you might even have a negative cycle. So you're basically trying to calculate the shortest path between U to V, right? And maybe that negative cycle is not even reachable from you. So in that case, it will not affect. But it's a good idea to kind of remove negative cycles.
But like even in directed graph,
yeah,
those nodes which are involved in the negative cycle all will have negative infinity.
That's true. That's true. It will be in the single shortest path. If you are looking from all the shortest path between U to all other edges, all other vertices, right? Then certainly you will get minus infinity in some of them. Okay, so what I meant is that if you are just interested in the shortest path between U and V, okay, and maybe this negative cycle is not even reachable for you, in that case, the problem still is a valid problem. I mean, it has a finite number, the shortest path between U to V. But, right? Is it clear? I mean, if I am saying something that you are not clear, please tell, because I am kind of right now hoping that you guys have got familiarized yourselves with the graph theory and this kind of stuff enough that I can say terms and you will be able to follow. Okay. If not, just do stop me. Okay. So question that, so I think I don't remember what was the problem that was there. If you want to see it, what was the exact statement that was kind of there? Something very weird. Good. Yeah, so what was the question that was there in the assignment 4? Yeah, so assignment 4 was a given example that shows that Dijkstra's algorithm doesn't work if the algorithm has negative length edges, right? So, of course, see, there is a two parts that will come there, okay? So there will be two parts that comes there. First of all, if it has negative cycles, then anyways Dijkstra is the finite algorithm, right? And so of course it will not be able to produce minus infinity in any setting. So it will be false. And what happens in the case of, even if the graph has negative cycles, doesn't have negative cycles. So what if a graph has no negative cycles, but has negative edges? Okay, so this is the kind of thing that we want to ask. So this is a valid question, right? If it doesn't have a negative cycle, but it has negative edges, in that case, this problem is of course the correct problem to, I mean, this is a kind of the very important problem to, I mean, this is a well-defined problem, right? It's a well-defined problem, and you can prove it, or you can convince yourself that between any 2 points, U and V, the shortest distance can be negative, but it cannot be minus infinity. So it's a finite number. And in the algorithm, the problem that was given to you guys, you have been kind of, I mean, there's a part of it which kind of says that you can also prove that Dijkstra's algorithm will not work in this setting. So you can show, okay, I don't know whether you guys have, how many of you have shown it actually? How many of you could not prove it actually? Then maybe just ask that.
Sir, I have given a counter example.
Yeah, you're supposed to give a counter example, but for what? For this particular case or with the negative cycle?
No, without negative cycle.
Without negative cycle. So let me write it here. You can show that in this case, and what do we mean this? It is this case. Okay, Dijkstra can make error. Okay, it is not guaranteed at all that Dijkstra gives the correct answer. And if you go over the proof of Dijkstra's correctness, you kind of can almost see where the error happens.
Sir,
Yeah.
sir, I could find a example of a directed graph with negative edges but no negative cycles where Dijkstra fails. But I couldn't find an example of an undirected graph with negative edges where Dijkstra fails. I mean, I tried, but I couldn't come up with an undirected graph.
You could not come up with the undirected graph where Dijkstra fails.
Without negative cycles.
Let me see. No, I think you can do that. Okay, let's see. Okay, let's make a. I will make a shot on the fly. Okay.
So like I made one. Should I just say it?
Oh yeah, yeah. Go ahead. Go ahead. Yeah, if that's
Okay,
good.
so just
Tell me.
okay,
Should I draw something?
just three vertices.
Okay.
All of them are connected.
Okay.
Like all of them are edges.
Right.
So make +2 on one side, +5 on one side,
-4.
or yeah, -4.
Right. And this is the our starting point, right? This is you.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Very good point. Very good. So here, what will happen? That U is of course a distance 0 from each other, right? And the next thing that Dijkstra will find is, oh, okay, what is the next vertices which is at the closest distance? And it would be this, right? At distance 2. Because it cannot be this because they are at distance 5. So note the Dijkstra basically has a set of selected edges, for selected vertices for which it has already made some decision. And for rest of them, it looks at all the other ones which are outside the selected place and basically tries to find out the shortest path between this U to any of the new elements, new vertices that have not been for which matter has not been closed, right? So at this point you say, oh, for 2, the shortest path is 2. And for this vertex, the shortest path is 2. And then it says, what is the next one? And the next one it says that, oh, for this one, the shortest path is, no, for this one, it will make the right answer, possibly. Okay, it is oh, I can have 2 things. At this point, both of these vertices have been taken care of. So I can come from U directly, but that will cost me 5. And I could have come from this vertex 2, which will be, means that I will be, to come from this edge, therefore, will be -4 plus 2, which is -2. Hello, so for here, reaching here, it is -2. Right? But actually, already you can see, and that will be the end of the Dijkstra algorithm. But actually, you can see that this one is a problem, right? Now, this one, the shortest path is not -2. It is actually from here. It is plus. It is not +2. It's +1. Okay. So even in an undirected graph, also Dijkstra's will fail. Okay. Is it fine?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Any other? What about the others? I mean, did you?
Sir, in the assignment, I have done for undirected graph.
That's okay. That's okay. See, undirected graph is also undirected graph. Okay, so that is not a problem.
Yes.
Because you can have a undirected graph basically means that you can have
Both the direction.
yeah, direction in both the sides with the same weight. Okay, so undirected graph is also a directed graph, so that's not a problem at all. right? Okay, good. So now the next question that was there here is that, can you think of an algorithm to solve this single per shortest? Oh, it's a ST, SSST should be, or shortest traversal problem. I think that's what he meant. Whatever, it's a ST problem in this case when there is no. So Dijkstra's algorithm fails, and question is that, can we come up with a, can we design an efficient algorithm for single shortest path in graphs with negative edges but no negative cycles? Okay, so this is the question that was. So now let me ask you, how many of you actually did that? Could do that? I mean, feel free. I mean, now you are submitted, so don't worry. I just want to know.
Sir, I did that, but after seeing a YouTube video.
Okay. What about others?
Yes, sir, I did it.
You did that. Well, how many of you could not do it? Let's say. Okay, maybe should I have a poll? You can have a poll. I mean, just 1 second. In fact, I can have a separate one, but okay. So let me just save this one and.
Like, what do you mean by not efficient?
Not efficient meaning, say, not polynomial time or something like that. Say.
Like my algo was MN, where
Yeah,
M,
good. That is more than efficient. That's perfect.
but that's not polynomial then, right?
Mn is polynomial.
The definition you gave for polynomial last class.
Yes, it is the polynomial in the input size, right? What is the input size?
Input size is M square, right? If we give a matrix, adjacency matrix.
Yes, it is n square, right?
Yeah, but my algorithm is Mn.
Yeah, but M is basically, so first of all, M is basically n square, right?
It's bounded by that, right? Yeah.
So in that case, it is.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so there can be other edges, there can be repetition edges also, but that is again not the most that's not something to be worried about, particularly because even if there is a repetition edges, what is the repetition edge? Means there are multiple edges between two vertices. Okay, in that case, the number of edges is not necessarily bounded by n square. Okay, But then also you have to kind of, somebody have to specify those edges, right? If I say that there are 10 edges between U and V, and those edges are weight this, and this. Now, what does it mean? It means that I have to have at least 10 bits of information, right? So the input size always has M in it, in whatever ways you give it.
Okay, sir.
Okay, good. So I can see that you guys have done a very good job. I mean, yeah, many of you have seen it in the internet. So by the way, people who have seen it in the internet, let me just say, do you know, I mean, is it a dynamic programming algorithm?
Yes, sir. Basically, I saw it in internet, and after that I see that in 6.8 it is given there in the book.
So all of you have found that particular algorithm, and people who have come up with their own algorithm, it is also the dynamic programming algorithm.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So good. So this algorithm is what is known as the Bellman-Ford algorithm, right? You have seen it already?
Yes, sir.
This name. And this is actually this kind of typical problem in, I mean, I know that you guys have seen it, done it, but I'll still go and say a little bit of it on it. Now, what is the crucial part here, okay, that was required for this core thing? The main part, first of all, the observation that was there is that, okay, the shortest path from U to V, any U to V, okay, so can it have repetition of edges? So must not have any repetition of edges. Why? So if not, say I have U, I have V, and I have an edge path that goes on, and maybe it's repetition. Now note the repetition of edge, and I mean edge in the same direction, okay? I don't mean edge in the opposite direction. You can have an edge in the opposite direction possibly. Okay. But actually even not even that. So which means that you have you will have a vertex in common for certain, right? So you have gone along this path, right? You have gone along this path. So I'm saying that this is, say, the shortest path. Whatever I've drawn is the shortest path between U and V. Okay. Now here, you basically, they say shortest path goes along this thing, and it goes to this vertex, then it takes a nice, beautiful loop, comes back to the same vertex, and then goes to the V. Now, can this be the shortest path?
No, sir.
No, why not?
We can remove the path and the path will be shorter.
Exactly, we can remove this path. Okay, why can we remove this path and the path can be shorter?
Because of no negative cycles.
Right, because this path must be positive weight as a whole, right? Because there is no negative weight. So if I remove this path completely, I remove a positive weight out. So the new path that will be there, which is basically going here and here, will be a path with smaller weight than this original one. Now it is possible that this path has zero weight, okay, in which case U to V, this path is also a shortest path. But I am not asking you to find all possible shortest paths, right? Our goal is to find some possible shortest path. So that means there exists a shortest path that doesn't reuse a vertex or edge. Okay, good. Now, so that means every shortest path, what does it mean? It means that every shortest path has at most n edges. Right? Now the crucial
minus
part
one.
here, yeah, sorry, n minus 1 edges. Hello, yeah, somebody was saying something?
No, sir, I was saying n minus one thing.
Yeah, it is n minus 1 edges. And note that even if I had written it as n edges, okay, it would have been still fine. Why? Because even if I allow you to use lot more edges, you should not be able to make the path shorter, right, in terms of total weight. So all I therefore asking is that I can change this problem and saying that, so this problem basically says that, okay, among all paths of length n minus 1 or less than or equal to n minus 1, what is the shortest path from U to V? Right? And this is basically the kind of, almost you can think of this is the heart of the problem. Once you can ask this question, okay, then the issue comes up is that, aha, in that case, why am I asking this n minus 1? What happens if I ask a slightly different question? I can ask the question of lesser than or equal to any particular k. Among the all paths of less than or equal to k, what is the shortest path between U to V? Now, this is a valid question. And particularly, if I can solve for k equals to n minus 1 or k equals to n, I will have the full answer. Right? So, this is the crucial observation. Once you think in this direction, the rest of it should have followed immediately in some sense. Okay? So, here is a value k, and your goal is to gauge k equals to n. If you put your hat, I mean, like this high school hat on or something like that, or it's like the natural question to ask is, what about induction? If somebody comes up and tells us the whole information for a particular k, so for k equals to 10, here is the answer. Here is the shortest path of length at most k. Can I go to the shortest path of length k plus 1, which is the 11, right? And that is what you do for the dynamic programming. That is exactly dynamic. Okay. And okay, the fact is that you can do it also is important, right? And the next observation is that if we know, what do we know? Now we know this following thing. For all vertices, all V in the vertex set, the shortest path from, so U is the spatial vertex, right? From U to V of length less than or equal to k. So this is something, if somebody has come up and told us this great thing, then we can, now this whatever that can means, right, just find out the same thing but just one step ahead. We can compute for all V in V the shortest path from u to v of length less than or equal to k plus 1. Right? So this is the kind of the induction that we are talking about, or recurrence that we are talking about. And note that if we could have computed it in polynomial time, let's not worry about mn or something. Say if I can compute it with certain number of times, right? In that case, what do I have to do? It's the recurrence. I have to repeat it n times and I am done, right? So the whole problem comes down to using this, where it is k, to using this, so producing this, where it is k plus 1. And how do you do it? Right? And this one, once you face the problem like this, this is kind of pretty simple. The main issue here is that, okay, the main crucial part here is that you are computing it for all v. Okay, so let's see. Say I have u over here, okay, and I have some particular vertex here. So let's call it w. Now, right now, this is the path from u to w, and that uses less than or k thing. Meaning this is the shortest path from u to w that uses less than or k vertices, k edges, right? Then, okay, now somebody has given you one extra edge. So you can use that edge, right? How do you use it? And the only great observation is that, oh, good. So at the end of the day, I have to reach w. So that means I have to reach w from a set of edges, right? I can only reach w from those set of edges which enters w, right? That can be the one from which I have already entered to some other vertices that are not there. Right? So at the end of the day, I will end up, if any path is there from u to w, I have to enter w from this set of, say, four edges. And if I enter from, say, this particular edge, and I am looking for path of length k plus 1 from u to w, this basically translates to finding a path of length, or the shortest path of length less than or equal to k from u to this particular neighbor of w, right? So that means if I can do that, this is the, so this path that I have just drawn here is the shortest path. So let's give a name here. So let's call this one x. So this is the shortest path of length u to w. Okay, so what is this? This is the shortest path of length, shortest path of length less than or equals to k plus 1 from u to w that enters w from x, right? And of course, the shortest path, if you say, oh no, but I only need this much information. This is all that I need. I don't need this where it enters from. So what do? You take the minimum of them. You look at all the x's through which you can enter w. You take the minimum of them. Good. So that means if I can give you this quantity for all the entry points of w, then you are done. And how do I calculate this? Great. Because see, this part, the shortest path here, this is the shortest path from u to x, right? Of length k. Okay. And the shortest path of length k, and this information has already been given to us to start with. Because we said that I know for all the vertices, I know the shortest path from u to that vertex. of length less than or equal to k. So at this point at x, I must be knowing the shortest path of length u from x. Okay, and so that is all that you do. I'm sure you guys have seen this one, you have done this one because most of you have solved it. But I just still wanted to go over it so that you can get a intuition about how you can approach this set of problems. Okay. Any questions, doubts, any intuitions that you want to see more or something? Okay, so if not, so that's very good. So that means you guys have more or less understood this whole thing. So what I will do is that I will post another problem set, another assignment. So in fact, by the way, the problem set that has been given, the problem set 3, that has dynamic programming problems also. Okay, so you might have seen it already. So in the next assignment, we will give you a set of problems that would cover almost everything that we have covered till now, particularly the 3 types of grid algorithms: greedy, divide and conquer, and dynamic programming. But of course, it will be slightly more towards dynamic programming. Okay, and then for dynamic programming, the best thing that you can think of is actually solving problems more and more and more. Okay, good. So please let me know if you have any questions or not. If you have some other questions on this problem or anything that we have done so far. So if you are fine, I will move on to the next area in some sense. Okay, you guys are all fine?
So I had a doubt in problem set 2.
Problem set 2.
So there was a problem set 2. There was a question.
Yeah, tell me which question.
There was a question. I think question was 15 or 16. A question regarding the mother vertex.
Mother vertex. Can you see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Can you identify which problem?
I think 15. Question was 15.
15.
Yes.
So give a efficient algorithm which computes, it takes an input directed graph and determines whether or not there is a vertex S from which all the vertices are reachable. Good. Yeah. Okay. How do you do that?
So I had a naive approach of doing DFS from every vertex. Then we can find easily
you
if
can
there
do
is
that.
such a
If you
vertex.
can do a DFS from every vertex, you will do it. Okay. But you can.
So, but I couldn't.
You can do a better one.
So yes, I couldn't do a better one.
Okay. So say don't always jump into. So you guys are coming from the statistics world, right? So you know that before you apply a particular problem or a statistical method to a set of data and all those things, what do? You first work on the data a little bit, right? Before you apply. So here the problem was that here the graph, right? And you have this graph like this, and this is a directed graph. Fine. And you are asking questions like something like, is there a vertex?
Sir, we can like apply DFS on only one vertex, and then the last vertex to be finished will be the mother vertex. Means finished means after all the operations on that vertex has been completed. If we keep a track of that, then the last vertex to be explored or finished will be the mother vertex. Means if the mother vertex does exist, then we can we can just perform DFS on only one vertex and take note of the last vertex to be finished.
You start a DFS on some vertex, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And what do you mean last vertex? There's no last vertex, right? I mean, last vertex can be anything.
No. We are like keeping track of the vertices which are getting finished. Means there are 3 stages, right? Undiscovered, discovered, and then finished. So
correct.
So we are keeping track of the vertices which are getting finished.
Okay.
So the last vertex to get finished, if the mother vertex, if a mother vertex does exist in a graph, then the last vertex to be finished has to be a mother vertex.
No, so that's what you are saying.
But like, how will a DFS reach the mother vertex? Because this is the degree of mother vertex is 0, right?
Yeah, so that is okay. So good. So let me just do that. Okay, good. So okay. So what he is saying is that okay. So here is this graph, right? And you are asking whether there is a mother vertex or not. Correct?
Yes.
Now, okay. So what is okay? So what he is saying is that if you ideally, okay, you cannot reach the mother vertex, right? Because if you start from any vertex, you will not be able to reach the other vertex. Okay, but let's think that I will do a very weird looking DFS. What kind of DFS I will do? I will not go along an edge. I will go exactly opposite to an edge. I will do exactly opposite to an edge. Okay. Now, what does it mean? Meaning that every edge there is an anti-edge. Okay, the red ones are the anti-edges. Okay. Now, I have not told you that how is the anti-edge coming up. Okay. So, say this is a both-sided thing. So, this is anti-edge, this is the anti-edge, this is an anti-edge, and this is anti-edge. Okay. Now, if I could apply DFS, start from any vertex and apply DFS to this, right? Now, what does the DFS means? When does the DFS stops? Okay. When does the DFS stops?
When we have explored all the components of the source vertex. All the vertices in the component of the source vertex.
When you have looked at all the components, of course.
No, all the vertices in the component of that vertex.
All the vertices of the component that's on place, but on the right. So all the components are starting from here, right? Just 1 second. Let me just try to. Yeah. So what does DFS do? So DFS does that, right? It kind of will go down a particular path. It will keep on going down a particular path, right? On some path. And at some point of time, it will say, oh, good. Now I don't have anything that I have left to look at, right? So can this one, say at this point, I am here, okay? And I have not seen, right? I have not seen okay. So I've seen. I say that this vertex don't have this vertex there has no other edges. Okay. So I've seen this much. This vertex don't have any new vertices to look forward, and I go back and start. I finish this edge. This is finished. Okay, and I go back here, and I take a look at here. Oh, okay. This one has some edge, vertex that is still now not touched. Now, first thing is that can this vertex be the mother vertex?
Like, then the mother vertex should be a leaf of the DFS tree.
Yeah, but in that case, okay, so let's say that this one cannot be a mother vertex. Why? because I am doing it in the reverse. Okay, look, I am doing it on the reverse set of edges or anti-edges. So if this is the mother vertex, correct?
Sir,
Yeah.
how is the graph given to us?
The graph is given to us. Okay, I will come to that. I was going to that a bit later, but okay, let's think. So the graph is given to us in an adjacency list.
If it is given as an adjacency list, then since it is directed, the array corresponding to every vertex will show the vertices from which there is exists an edge from.
Maybe this is also what the other person asked just now. This is some question that is something I was about to say it later. Okay, so if I give you a graph G, okay, you can produce the G reverse. What does it mean? Meaning if an UV is there in this edge, then a VU is there in this edge. So if and only if a VU is there in this edge here. Okay. So given a graph G, you can reverse the graph in time order of m plus n or v plus e. Okay, first thing that you can do is this one. Okay, so okay, how do you do that? See, if it was adjacency matrix, it was very easy, right? But here it is adjacency list. But that is also not too complicated, right? Because you will just walk down the adjacency list, right? You just go on a kind of a traversal, you can think of it. You can almost do a traversal. Okay, you go to a vertex and oh, this is the vertex 1, and this one has edges to 2, 6, 9, and 8. Okay, and then something. So what do? You create a new vertex, new edge, maybe new graph. Okay, the new graph that I'm creating, I'm kind of, for now I'm not reusing space. I'm saying that the spaces are there. Now I will just go here and say, oh, in 1 I have 2. That means in 2 I should have a 1. Now I go down, oh, in 6, 1 I have 6, then I should go to 6 and I put a 1 and something. Then say here I see that, oh, in 2 there should be a 1 also, and there is a 5. Okay, so what do? After you have kind of put this, all these things over here, this you have kind of reversed this thing over here and put it wherever whichever things appears here, you have put a 1 here, right? Or maybe I will just add a little bit more, so just to be clear here. So let's say it's 6 also. So what do? You will say that, oh, good. So that means 1 must have 2, because I have a 1 must have 2. 5 must have 2, and 6 must also have 2, and 6 already has 1. So I will just have to add a new thing and say 2. So it is kind of a reversal. It's kind of a traversal that we are doing. You can do a BFS and DFS and also do that traversal kind of stuff. Traversal. Okay. Right. And yeah. So and by doing so, you will be able to reverse the graph. So getting a reversal of a graph is not a problem at all. Okay, this is just a additive thing. So this is what I was saying. in the beginning, that given a graph, note that you don't necessarily have to always work with the graph. You can massage it to produce other things, like, oh, I am working with a reversal of a graph, or you can say remove some of the edges in a graph, or you have to, or such kind of if there are repetition of edges, you can take care of that, and so on and so forth. Okay, so reversal of the graph is not the hard part. So now you can think of that you have a graph which is a G, you have GR, you can also have, therefore, you have G, you can have GR, you can also have G union GR if required. Okay. Right. Now let's see what is going on here. Now with this, if you have access to reverse graphs, can you solve this problem? Somebody pointed out that in the reverse graph, if you continue with, if you start from any vertex and do a DFS, right? Then the last one to finish is the mother vertex. So that is not true, by the way. Okay, because see here in this example, so say let's say I am saying this is positive and this is, let's say age from here to here. Say let's say for the sake of it, and there's of course in the reversal edge there is an edge here. See, this is a mother vertex. This is a mother vertex. You can go from here to here, you can go from all the places. But when you reverse it, then this might very well, I mean, you can start from here, it comes here, or it, I mean, it kind of reaches here, or say, if not, if I don't start from here, let's say I don't start from here, right? I start from, say, here. Okay, I start from here, I go here, and when I'm reaching here, so this is this vertex, I have nowhere else to go, right? And so I cannot, so this will be finished. This mother vertex will have been finished, or the first thing to be finished will be the mother vertex. Oh, so you are saying that that is what will happen? The first one to be finished? No, but that's also not true.
So maybe we can just iterate over all the nodes and look at node with degree 0.
That is if you are guaranteed to have degree 0. Right?
I mean, but if we have a mother node, then its degree must be 0, right?
No, mother node is okay. What is this mother node is stored, right? There is an edge from which all the vertices are reachable. No, it's not degree 0. It might very well be that it has a, I mean, in degree 0 or out degree 0, you are saying, right?
In degree 0. Out degree has to be.
No, it's not, I mean, no, be like this one is the example.
Okay.
So this is in degree 0. I not 0, it is in degree 1. Right? And still you can, and still this is still it is a mother node. Okay. And this is an example in which this will be not the last thing, because here there is an edge over here. So it will kind of continue in some sense, right? Here, if you align this one, so this might be the mother node that is happening here. This is the mother node that is there. And you continue in some sense. So it is not even clear this will be either the first one or the last one that will happen.
No, like in this, in the example you have given, that node has an in degree 1, but the node above it means the vertex from which the that edge is coming.
Yeah. This one.
Yeah, that is also a mother node. I mean,
that is also a mother node. That
I
is
was saying
true.
that only in the not in the reverse graph, in the original graph only.
Okay, the original graph you are finding, you are doing the DFS.
Yeah, in the original graph only, the last vertex to be finished has to be a mother node. There can be multiple mother nodes in a graph, but
No, but in the DFS, in the original graph, you might not even reach the mother node. Because there might not be any edge going into it.
but then we
Maybe we can do
then we can like go over the like the remaining edges, right? Means component wise.
Just one second. So if you just go, if you, I think your statement is not too bad. So if you just do this DFS in the reverse graph, right? And say I stopped here. Let's look at the last thing that has stopped. Okay. Now this is a, if this is the mother node, so let's look at this stage, okay? At this stage, this node is saying that I don't have any more edges going out. But if there exists a mother node, that means either the mother node is one of this set of them, okay, or there is no mother node. Because I know that from here, if the mother node exists, then there must be an edge from here to the mother node, right? In the reverse graph.
Sir,
I mean, it should be reachable from the mother node, right? So in DFS, whenever you have a particular vertex, okay, everything that is reachable from it must be below it, right? Or has been already been looked at. Correct?
Yeah,
Sir.
to to like address that problem that we might not reach a mother node, we can do it like this. Means we first choose any vertex and do the entire DFS on that vertex. Okay, and the last node to get finished, we'll check whether it's whether its out degree is n or not.
Out degree in what? Out degree is n. No, that is not good. I don't think out degree n or not, that is not going to give you anything. I mean, it can have out degree just one and still be a mother node, and you can have out in degree non-zero and still can be mother node. Right? It is a reachable thing, not just immediate neighbors.
Achha, achha.
Right? It's a reachability thing. Okay, good. So first thing that I can see is that the first level that has gone down
Sir.
here, okay. So that must be so the shortest, the mother node must be in the first path from the root to its first leaf or leftmost leaf. Okay, that is kind of certain. Okay. So what you can do is that, okay, good. So this is what happens. Fine. Okay. Good. Okay, now I got it. Okay. Okay. What happens? Okay. Good. I think, okay, so here is how we can do. So first of all, are you guys, can you see that if I start from any vertex, okay, in the reverse graph, and I keep on going down, till I find a vertex in which I find that, oh, there is no more new vertices to be found. What does it mean? It means that if I draw it in the blue, there can be edges to the back vertices. That is possible. But there is no other edges outside. Okay. Fine. Right? Okay. So I claim that, okay, first thing that I claim is that one, if mother node exists, or if a mother node exists, if a MN, so mother node exists, then it must be in this chain. Okay.
Sir,
Right? Yeah, go ahead.
sir, if a node is mother node, then every vertex from which that is reachable, that is also a mother node.
Every vertex that is reachable.
Every vertex from which that is reachable.
Yes, that is also true.
So if we know that a mother node exists in a chain, the starting point of the chain must be the mother node. Must be at least a mother node.
Right, right. This is not okay. Anyways, instead of us, but I think we are kind of not too far. Has anybody managed to solve this one? Just think.
Maybe we can do a cycle contraction action. So basically, if a mother node is in a cycle, then every other node in the cycle is also a mother node, right? So we can kind of like converge all those vertices into a single point and keep repeating this action till we have no cycle. Then we can just find a node with degree 0, in degree 0.
Yeah. The in degree 0 thing, I'm not. Yeah, okay.
So in a directed acyclic graph, we must have a node with in degree 0, right?
No, no, no. In a directed acyclic graph, yeah, that is true.
Right. And so if a mother node exists, it has to be the node with in degree 0 because that node isn't reachable from any other
That
node.
is true. So you are saying that you will go and start contracting cycles.
Contracting cycles, yeah.
So that is possible.
But I don't know the complexity of contracting cycles or how to even detect cycles.
So for DAG, I think topological thought will be sufficient. For DAG.
DAG, we don't even need topological sort, just find a node with in degree 0.
Yeah. Just one second. Just one second. Okay. Okay, anyways, let's say, I mean, okay, so instead of us kind of breaking our head right now on the fly, can I just request one of you to again put it up in the classroom, a comment, so that we can I can just get back to this one accordingly. Who can take a responsibility here?
I'll post it.
Yeah, okay. Just had to say that. Can you please? Can we? So we don't see the proof of what is the algorithm for this? Okay, and we can all think about it. So let's do that one, and we can come back on. I will surely do it on Tuesday. By then time they would have sorted it out. Okay, so in that case, I was hoping to solve something else, do something else that I'm unable to do today. I think we have already crossed. So I would request then you guys to go and read a little bit of chapter 7. Okay. Say chapter 7.1, chapter 7.2, and that's it. Let's think about this one. So I guess, so has this, as I understand in the graph theory, in the discrete math course, you are not in, so you are not, matching and all such things were not introduced to you, right? Hello?
No, sir.
Okay. So, yeah. So kind of, okay, so you don't have, so, okay, forget this, whatever I am told, don't even think about it. Why don't you go and to the internet and read these following things? Okay. What is a matching in a graph? What is a cut in a graph? Okay. So I can even tell you this vague idea what a matching is and what a cut is and all such things. Okay. So okay, maybe yes.
We did cuts.
You did cuts in your discrete math.
Yes, sir.
Did you do flows by any chance?
So we did that Ford-Fulkerson algorithm.
Oh, you did the Ford-Fulkerson. So you know maximum min cut.
Yes.
Wonderful. So maximum min cut with proof was done in your discrete math course. I mean, I will not ask you to submit a proof of that, but has it been discussed? I mean,
Sir, actually, all stuff was done after the lockdown. So, sir had just sent recorded videos and sent them.
Oh, okay.
It wasn't like he did discuss these algorithms, but the proofs weren't very clear. Flows completely introduced even after the lockdown started. Before lockdown, we did not know anything about flows.
Okay, good. So maybe so what I will okay, why don't you guys then just try to read this chapter 7 and 7.1, okay, not too much if you can, and at least get yourself familiarized with what is the cut, what is the flow, okay, and those kind of stuffs. Okay, I mean, basically, as I think of it, is that it is the say I have some big oil refinery here at U, right? Sorry.
Sir, we have a class from 1 o'clock.
Oh, perfect. Okay, then then okay, nothing much we can do about it here. So let me now start. Okay. Okay, sorry. So okay. So go on. So I would request you to kind of go over 7 and 7.1. 7 meaning before 7.1 and 7, and come back, and we will on Tuesday we will have we will do this. We'll go into this little bit more on this next Robinson theorem. Okay. Okay. Sorry for overshooting this one. Yeah. No. Thanks.
Thank you, sir.
Sir, can you please upload videos of the last 2 classes?
Yeah, some of the last class video I don't have it, but this class video I will upload, and the video of the last to last class, it has been uploaded. I uploaded it today.
Okay, sir.
Okay.